Hey, my men and my women. What's going on? Happy Monday. If you guys are in, say hello. All that good stuff here. Started about 5 minutes early. We're about to hear the big bombshell report. The bombshell. I should have like sound effects here. I don't have any. But welcome. I Dalton Trustees YouTube channels where we're checking out the stream. It has some issues with the sound. I think he got it to work. Let me make sure.
Oh, it needs to edit after the projector.
Okay, so it's sounding good. Everything is up to par. So we're gonna be hanging out. Today we're looking at the report here from Lord Lightfoot to see exactly what went down, and then tomorrow we have a Thornton Township meeting, the first one where new trustee Wiedemann will be here. So we got everything ready to go. So in a few minutes I'll shut up, and then we will react to whatever Lori Lightfoot has to say. Former Chicago mayor. So I hope you guys are doing great. Hit the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We are trying to get to 100,000 subscribers this year. So without further ado, let me shut the hell up and see what's going on here. Let's see. Oh, my sound is working. Did they pause it? Did they pause it? Let me see. All right. Hopefully, let me check and see if the trustees page, because we look at Dalton Trustees YouTube page, if their sound is not working on their end. I heard him earlier. I don't know. Okay, so there's no sound right here. If not, we'll go to a different stream if she starts talking, and maybe we'll use the audio from a different stream and then still look at the PowerPoint. Oh. Never mind. We can hear. Okay, cool.
I think I'm going to stand so people in the back of the room. I thought we were going to have like a little podium, and I forgot to ask that, but they had a podium set up last time, so I just assumed that would happen. But
Well, we may have to go to a different stream if this doesn't work. The only reason I want to stick on this stream because they have the PowerPoint right here for us to take a look at. I know Critical, we don't have to look, or other streamers, we don't have to look at the board as they speak. But if they keep having sound issues, then we will move on to another person. So hopefully he gets it adjusted. But I hope you guys are having a good evening. I hope the weather is a little better where you are compared to last week. But yeah, we'll see. Listen, hopefully out of all this, Dalton will get their sound equipment together. Everyone has better phones. Everyone has like better sound equipment. Hopefully after all this drama, they get their sound stuff together. So we'll see. If it doesn't work, if she starts speaking, we will move on to a different live. And if this sound is not working, or maybe we'll just have to look at it. We may have to look at the screen from the stream. Okay. So I got to see Critical up here with a good view. So yeah, if it doesn't work, we'll move on to Critical Smoker's stream. And we'll I guess we'll just read it from here. But I like how, I don't know who set this up, but it looks pretty cool. JD with the 499 super chat. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. So we're going to see, I guess, the extent. This is the final report, the extent of the findings that Mayor Lori Lightfoot had put together. And we'll go from there. So hopefully this works. If not, we're going to jump to another stream. Is it midnight in London? No idea. What's the hour? Like 6 hours away? 4 hours? I'm not really sure. I'm in Eastern time zone. But yeah, I don't know if he muted the stream or he has some sound. I know he should have the best sound. Because this is from Ed Steve Dalton Trustees page, but again, right now there ain't no sound coming through. So, how much did they pay? I think it was $30K. I forgot. I should know that. I know it was like $400 an hour, and it's supposed to be a max at a certain amount. If anyone knows the exact amount, let me know. You can put it in the comments. I totally forgot. There's been so much that's been going on, so much to keep track of. Keep track of. I do not remember how much it is. Let's see. But thank you guys for coming through. Got a good showing already. Like, subscribe. If you are interested in this type of content dealing with reckless mayors and reckless officials, then you found the right place. Hit that subscribe button. Wait, I see something. Hold on, I totally missed it. Iron with the $5 super sticker. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's about 30. Yeah, 30K. Yeah, 30K. All right. If she starts to speak, we may have to move on. Come on, Steve. Let's see. Because I know.
All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out on a cold night, and hello to those folks who are watching on the live stream. My name is Lori Lightfoot, and with my colleague Amanda Kite, we're from the Charles River Association.
I'm sorry, I can't handle
Public, our final report regarding our investigation of the allegations of financial mismanagement and other matters concerning the Village of Dalton. A couple of quick housekeeping matters. It should be circulating index cards if you want to ask us questions. We're going to go through the entire presentations first. I'm not promising you that we're going to be able to answer everyone's question, but we'll try to get you as many as possible. We will set up, for those that we aren't able to answer, we will set up a microsite and have answers to the different questions there. Also, that's circulating is a document that if you want a hard copy or an electronic copy of this PowerPoint presentation, give us your name and your email address, and we'll make sure that you get it within the next 24 hours. All right. Well, make sure you fill out the paperwork. There's signing sheets going around that you should be able to put your name and your email address, and then we'll be able to provide you with a copy of the deck. The deck is long, and given the number of people that were here, we felt like it made more sense to provide electronic copies and try to anticipate how many people would want a copy. So let me start by saying that, as you know, we began this investigation in earnest back in the spring of 2024 after the trustees overrode a veto of the resolution hiring us through the Legislative Council. We were tasked with looking into irregularities, allegations of irregularities regarding financial mismanagement by Mayor Tiffany Henyard and others in her administration. And I want everyone to be clear, we are not conducting a criminal investigation. This is an investigation that depended upon witness testimony, that depended upon getting access to certain documents. And to be clear, we did not receive total cooperation in this investigation. In fact, we encountered many challenges getting access to relevant documents and information from the very beginning of the engagement. We do not have subpoena power as an independent investigative team, which would have allowed us to obtain materials and cooperation from individuals. The village's personnel policies do not require cooperation with internal investigation. That proved to be a challenge in this circumstance. And the lack of in this circumstance. And the lack of cooperation by some individuals led to delays, limited our abilities and the scope of work, and ultimately limited the information that we were able to address in the course of this investigation. Despite these obstacles, we made progress in providing information to the trustees and to the public on the true financial condition of the Village of Dalton, along with some other issues. And as a result of that, we're able to make some concrete recommendations, many of which the trustees have already adopted, on how to right the ship, to make sure that there are financial guardrails in the operation of city government, and to provide some other supports that would all be in favor of transparency and good governance. For those of you who don't know, we thought it would be important to give just a little bit of background about the Village of Dalton. The village was incorporated in 1892. And according to the most recent census data, the population is approximately 21,426. The median household income is 58,706, and the village is approximately 91% African American. The village has a trustee form of government, which matters under the organization of the Illinois Municipal Code, and we'll talk about that briefly in a moment. The key city employees for the village, aside from the trustees, are the mayor, the village administrator, the director of administration, director of finance. Now, I'm not going to read everything on this slide. This is excerpts from the Illinois Municipal Code, but suffice it to say that the code really is a set of specific mandates on how a trustee form of government and other forms of government are supposed to conduct themselves. It provides things like there should be an annual appropriation, and ideally that is done in the first quarter of the village's fiscal year. No official can incur debt over and above what the budget is unless there is a 2/3 majority vote by the board trustees. There can't be entering into contracts without a corresponding appropriation. The municipality must have an audit of its financial records annually. As you know, this became an issue. We'll talk more about that as well. And that audit and other financial information must be filed annually with the comptroller's office, or as has happened now to Dalton, the comptroller has the ability to force an audit of the financial records. Now, on that point, if you go to the comptroller's office and you look under on their website under the municipal division, there are literally hundreds of municipalities across the state of Illinois who have not filed the necessary financial documents, whether it's the financial report, whether it's the audit, and some of these delinquencies go back years. But soon after we had our report in early August of last year, the comptroller's office suddenly paid attention to the village of Dalton and took notice, while other municipalities across the state have been delinquent in their responsibilities for years. One might ask, why is that so?
Right.
Oh, come on. What's going on with the sound? It's not me, guys.
Of governance for the village are not assembled in one location, filed with the state, so that all of you can look up what's the code say on this, that, or the other thing. This became something that we learned early on, which a little bit of a surprise, but became another challenge to overcome, and making sure that we had a true picture of what the rules and laws were that had been passed that governed the village of Dalton. As a result, these are the absence of archived ordinances and resolutions not being readily public led to gaps in our understanding about the laws, making governance unnecessarily difficult. Next slide. One thing, given what you've heard and seen over the course of the last couple of years, the village actually does have a purchasing policy and manual. And it's very straightforward, as you might expect. The challenge has been it hasn't been followed, and we'll get into details about that. But let me give you a little specifics. The policy essentially provides directions for the acquisition of all goods and services. And when used with good judgment and common sense, as it reads, the quote, the policies and procedures conveyed within will allow the village to obtain required supplies and services efficiently and economically. The policy also provides, in general, all supplies, materials, equipment, contractual and professional services required for operational efficiency will have been included in the annual budget. Next slide. There is in this purchasing policy set controls on who can authorize what at what dollar levels. As you can see from this slide, department heads can authorize spending up to $1,000. Between $1,001 and $5,000, the village administrator can approve. And over $5,000, any expenses for goods or services over that amount must be brought to the village board for approval as set forth in the purchasing policy. The finance department is supposed to have a position called the staff accountant. That person is responsible for centralizing and overseeing the purchase of goods and services for the village, and to determine whether or not an item proposed to be spent, that there are adequate funds and proper purchasing procedures have been followed before any monies of the village are incurred. That person is supposed to be reviewing and initiating all purchase orders, payment requests after they are submitted to the finance department for payment. They're supposed to be centralized purchasing. That makes sense because in best practices, you want to make sure that there's not what we call rogue spending going on, and that the village is getting the benefit of its bargain by maximizing its buying power. The purchasing policy specifically says that those items are supposed to be uniformly purchased by the purchasing agent. And the purchasing policy also requires the use of purchase orders. Those are essentially requisitions for goods and services, and it's detailed there. Similarly, the purchasing policy requires that when a purchase order is issued, it has the same authorization requirements as other matters. 1,000 by department heads, 5,000 by, up to 5,000 by the village administrator. Anything over 5,000 has to come before the board for approval. Now, just to give you a little bit of context, we're going to be using this term as we go forward in this presentation. There's something called a warrant that is used that also dictates how municipal funds are spent. The warrant is typically created based upon invoices that are created by a vendor and submitted to the department head for approval. As we told you in August, there is no electronic process for the submission of invoices from vendors. Paper copies, typically sent either in by hand or by email, are sent to department heads for approval. They must then list them in an electronic payment system called My Viewpoint, and then that generates the items that appear on the warrant list. Based upon our investigation, there are essentially two kinds of warrant lists. There's an accounts payable warrant list, which includes most of the village's expenses. And then there's a second warrant list that's called the electronic list, which includes payments made by wire, ACH, credit card, or any other electronic or online method. Next slide. The village expenditures, as reflected on the warrant list, are then reviewed and approved by the board at each board meeting. And after an expense is approved by the board, Janice Johnson, who's the Director of Administrative Services, is supposed to prepare a check for signature and payment. However, if Ms. Johnson is directed by Mayor Henyard or someone else, or there are insufficient funds to pay an item on the warrant list, then those checks are held. And apart from payroll, the accounts payable warrant list reflects invoices that have been submitted for approval and payment but not yet paid. And we understand from the John Kasparic accounting firm, which is essentially the outside firm for the Village of Dalton, that there are many items that appear on the electronic warrant list that have already been approved before they are presented to the board. Now, next slide. As it relates to credit card expenditures, we also understand from John Kasparic personnel that credit card balance is paid as a matter of course, meaning that as a bill becomes due, it's paid before it reaches the board for approval. In general, credit card expenses are only added to the warrant list when there's a receipt submitted. What we found is that many credit card expenditures never make it onto the warrant list for approval, in part because there is not a system for ensuring that there are receipts for the various credit card purchases. And what this means, unfortunately, is that the Board of Trustees in many instances was not able to even track or see credit card purchases that were being done over the last few years. Let's go on. Let's give a little background on Mayor Tiffany Henyard. As many of you know, she's a lifelong resident of the village. She served as a village trustee from 2013 to 2021. Her bio cites that she graduated from Robert Morris College, although we were unable to verify that. And she became mayor as of May 2021. Now, keep in mind, folks, there were two elections. There was an election at the end of February that went to a runoff, and then there was a final election later that spring. At the time of that second election, according to records provided to us by the County Clerk's Board of Elections, only 9.5% of registered voters in Dalton came out to vote. To set the framework further, we wanted to make sure you understood who were the people in charge of making various decisions under Mayor Henyard's administration. Aside from Mayor Henyard was the village administrator. You may recall that that was initially Dorothy Brown. And then in late 2021, Keith Freeman began his duties as the village administrator. The director of finance, you would think this is a very key position. Unfortunately, what we found over the course of our investigation is there are many periods of time during Mayor Henyard's tenure where that position was vacant. At one point, Tanjanique Miller fulfilled the role sometime in 2022 on a full-time basis, and then she went to a part-time basis by December of 2023 and worked only remotely. The position has been vacant, again, since early 2024. As I mentioned before, the Director of Administration is Janice Johnson, and you remember from my discussion about the purchasing policy, where there's supposed to be somebody who's a staff accountant that is responsible for monitoring and overseeing the purchase of goods and services on behalf of the village. There's no such position that exists in the village of Dalton. As a result of the small staff managing the city finances, the John Kasparic firm has essentially become the in-house, although they're outside, but the in-house financial department for the village of Dalton. Because there are a limited number of personnel, they became the de facto finance department. This remains true to this day. Kasparic firm has a junior staffer who is embedded in the village, and that person is here multiple times a week. There's a senior person that oversees that junior staffer, and the John Kasparic firm is involved in virtually every aspect of the finances of the village. Reconciling bank records, assisting in the preparation of payroll,
creating those monthly warrant lists, village accounting records, as well as a variety of other expenses. And as you might imagine, ladies and gentlemen, that kind of work, day in and day out, month after month, is not cheap. So the village is paying an extraordinary amount for outside services because it doesn't have the staff internally to do that. And in the absence of the director of finance, without the board of trustees being directly involved, there is very little oversight over the work that's being done on your behalf. Now, I want to also now shift gears and talk about some key events that have led to some of the financial crises that the village is experiencing. And what we found in our investigation, and that's based on a review of contemporaneous documents and witness interviews, that beginning at least as early as late 2021, there was a concerted, systematic effort on behalf of Mayor Henyard and others in her administration to hide the true financial condition of the village of Dalton from the trustees and from members of the public. To step back, let's talk about what the state of play was before Mayor Henyard became mayor. What we found is that prior to that time, the Kasperick firm would provide 3 different and important categories of information to the entire Board of Trustees, key city personnel, to make sure that folks were up to speed on a real-time basis as to what the circumstances were, both of expenses and revenue, and whether or not the expenses and revenue were on track with budget projections. They created a weekly report reflecting what work they did on behalf of the village, monthly financial statements with the detailed notes memorized in an accompanying memo, warrant lists, which detailed the expenditures that you presented at board meetings. And for a time, Kasperick firm also prepared and shared a payroll list. Now, initially, in 2021, at the beginning of Mayor Henyard's term, Chris Marabali of the Kasperick firm caused these documents to be sent to a wide array of people on an email. Right. And again, the trustees, key city employees, and Mayor Henyard herself. But this practice began to change in the fall of 2021. What we see in the fall of 2021 is the start of the effort to make sure that the trustees did not have full access to information about the true financial condition of the village's finances. And I want to walk you through step-by-step evidence that we were able to review that was memorialized contemporaneously, primarily in emails. In September 28, 2021, in an email to John Kasperick, Chris Marabali, remember this guy who's responsible for supervising the work here at Dalton, noted, quote, "The mayor has requested that the warrant list for both electronic and regular billing be sent to her first for review and approval prior to it being released to the board." On October 4th, 2021, Trustee House emailed Marabali seeking missing payroll reports that he had not received since the August 27, 2021 payroll. That same day, Marabali forwarded that email from Trustee House to Mayor Henyard and sought advice on how to respond. On October 21st, 2021, Chris Marabali reported to John Kasperick via email that Mayor Henyard was very upset with him because he disclosed in a board meeting that she had directed him not to send trustees payroll records. There's a board meeting that precedes this October 21st date, where you can see on the YouTube video that she's asking him, "Did I tell you not to send this information?" He answered in the affirmative, and then that was the source of her anger with him. He was later called into a meeting with the mayor in the presence of Janice Johnson and Dorothy Brown. And the mayor, in effect, told him that he should never contradict her in public and that he should shade the truth. By November of 2021, a split between Henyard and certain trustees was in full bloom and played out in the trustees' shrinking access to village financial information. And on January 22nd, 2022, Mirabali again transmitted the December financials and a corresponding memo to the full list, including the trustees. But by February 9th, Trustee Steve sent an email to Mirabali and others objecting to not having received payroll reports for approval and saying that he would not provide his consent for approval by the board if he did not receive those payroll records ahead of time. Trustee House concurred in that same email chain. On February 24th, and this is an important date, Mirabali transmitted the January financials and the accompanying Miller only to Tanjani Miller. At that point, the trustees were cut out. On March 9th, 2022, Mirabali sent his weekly report to the mayor, trustees, and others. The next day, Freeman admonished Mirabali and said, quote, "Chris, please stop sending these emails to everyone. It is a direct violation of the Open Meetings Act. Send this information to Ms. Miller and Janice," meaning Janice Johnson, end quote. I can tell you that the mere transmittal of information where there's no actual action being taken is not a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So in sum, by March 2022, the trustees were effectively cut off from receiving regular financial reports generated by the Kasperick firm, which would have provided them with information on the true financial condition of the village, and they would have been able to see at that point that there was a significant increase in expenses, as we reported previously, while at the same time, there was not revenue to match those expenses. Now I want to shift gear and talk to you a little bit about FOIA. Now, this is not a FOIA class. I'm not going to go in chapter and verse, but the bottom line, as many of you know, is that under Illinois law, municipalities are required to keep and produce the records of governance to anybody who asks for them, with a narrow set of exceptions. And that means that the municipality has to set up a process by which people who want certain kinds of information can get that information, and that they have a certain timeline in which they have to provide that information. They can ask for an extension of time, but what they cannot do is simply ignore requests coming in through the Freedom of Information Act. Let's go to the next slide. Now, from May 21st, from May of 2021 through September of 2023, based on our review of relevant FOIA records and witness testimony, there were a significant number of FOIA requests that came into the village. Most of these requests were ordinary type. People asking about particular addresses within the village, people seeking other information. But what we started to see in 21, and then it increased steadily over time, is people asking very specific information about the governance of the village, and in particular, asking information about how money was being spent. At the beginning of Mayor Henyard's tenure, Clerk Allison Key was responsible for FOIA requests. According to Clerk Key, when a FOIA request would come in, she and her team would review it, then they would send it to the relevant department. There were FOIA liaisons in each department, and it was their responsibility to look for responsive documents and then provide them to Clerk Key so that she could respond to the FOIA. The increased number of FOIAs over time posed a challenge given the limited resources that were devoted to FOIA. So what we saw is a very small staff, very few resources, and an expanding number of FOIAs that came in. There were not sufficient resources to be able to meet that rising interest in the governance of the village of Dalton. Now, the There were many allegations that we received that Mayor Henyard ordered village personnel to simply stop responding to FOIA. We were not able to verify those allegations, in part because village employees who reported directly to Mayor Henyard did not cooperate in our investigation. However, in April of 2023, trustees passed an ordinance intended to get the FOIA process back on track. And that ordinance read in part, quote, whereas the Board of Trustees finds that the village has experienced an insurmountable backlog of FOIA requests due to failures of village staff to respond to requests for information from the FOIA officer at the instruction of the mayor and her village administrator. The trustees obviously believe that that's precisely what had happened, which is that the mayor had instructed people within the departments not to respond to FOIAs. Now, despite the passage of this ordinance, the FOIA process didn't improve. And in fact, it continued to break down the non-cooperation of village staff, and many of whom simply, according to Clerk Key, simply stopped responding to her when she would send them FOIAs. And as a result, you know what's happened. Some of you, I'm sure, experienced it directly when you filed FOIAs. There were appeals made to the Attorney General, and in some instances, people simply filed suit. Now, one key milestone that I want to bring to your attention is when Clerk Key was stripped of her jurisdiction over FOIA. As you can see from the screen, she received an email from Keith Freeman on September 7, 2023. And in this email, I'll read the body of it. Dear Clerk Key, I am writing to inform you that you are hereby removed from your duty as a FOIA officer effective immediately. Your inability to process FOIA requests in a complete and timely manner has left us no choice but to restructure our process going forward. The village has redirected FOIA officer duties to another party, and as such, your services are no longer needed. I have advised all department heads of the change. Now, I want to be clear that Clerk Key denies the various allegations in Freeman's email. But I want to lift up a couple of things that I think are notable about this email in particular. When you see the language, the village has redirected FOIA officer duty to another party. Note in this email, he doesn't say who that other party is. And what we know from our investigation is that we were never able to determine who the person was that's actually handling FOIA and whether or not that person received the proper training. FOIA is not easy. There's a lot of nuances that are involved in the statute to make sure that there's proper compliance. We have no idea to this day whether or not the person or persons who is handling FOIA actually received proper training. There was no effort to take over the files of pending FOIA requests, and there was no process put in place for transitioning of the responsibilities from Clerk Key and her team to the unknown new FOIA officer. There's plenty of evidence, and again, I think you all have experienced it firsthand, that after Clerk Key was removed of her responsibilities over FOIA, the FOIA process didn't get better. If anything, it got worse. And these issues continue to this day. Now, let's shift gears, and we're going to talk about financial management concerns. There was an opportunity for the village of Dalton to take advantage of a $5 million appropriation that had been put in place from one of the state legislatures on behalf of the village of Dalton. This was in the state fiscal year 2023. However, that appropriation, for some reason that we were not able to ascertain, was never taken advantage of, meaning those monies never came into the village of Dalton. So $5 million that could have significantly helped the financial fortunes of this village got recycled and went elsewhere, but never came to the village of Dalton. I want to talk to you next about the American Rescue Plan dollars and funding that came to the Village of Dalton. As many of you know, the American Rescue Plan was put into place by the Biden-Harris administration to help municipalities, cities, counties, states recover from the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the village received an allocation through the state, which was appropriated in 2 tranches from the Illinois Comptroller's Office. You can see in this chart, the first tranche came in September of 2021, and the next big tranche came again in September of 22 for a total of just over $3 million. The U.S. Treasury Department had very strict reporting requirements on how municipal governments use those ARPA dollars. Somebody was supposed to be designated as an ARPA reporting person responsible for making sure that they were complying with U.S. Treasury regulations. But contemporaneous documentation that we have seen and confirmed in recent communications is that no one from the village actually took the responsibility to complete the reporting information. The access to the reporting portal was set up for Ms. Miller, the former finance director, but there's no evidence that she actually made the required reporting of how ARPA dollars were used here in the village. And based on the records that we have seen, there's approximately $1.7 million left of the ARPA funds, and it's held in a specific capital projects account. Based on what we've seen in the financial documents, the ARPA funds were used in a variety of ways, as you can see from this chart. As you noted, there's a big category of $481,379 called other expenses. This was used for a variety of different things, from construction materials and supplies, lawn care, pest control, utilities, sprinkler installation, but none of these things were specifically approved by the board. Now, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Amanda Kite, who's going to walk you through some more detailed information on the financial status as of October 31st, 2024. Take it away.
So now we're going to walk through and largely provide an update to the financial information that was presented back in August. And we've been provided records that cover the first 6 months of the village's fiscal year 2025. As of October 2024, the village's general fund, which is the fund that's used to account for the majority of the village's operations, remains in a net deficit position. However, the deficit position has decreased or improved from the information that was presented in August. And as of October 2024, the general fund's net deficit position is currently $2.4 million. Additionally, during the first 6 months of fiscal year 2025, the average monthly expenditures of the village have also decreased. Through fiscal year 2024, the village was spending on average $2.5 million per month. Wow. During the first 6 months of fiscal year 2025, that number is down to $2.1 million per month on average. Following along with that,
I think it's also important to note that we provided an update back in August of last year, which laid out many of these numbers and showed the village in really dire financial condition. The trustees immediately took action to address particularly the spending side of the ledger, significantly reducing the number of credit card access, working with banks, restructuring some of the expenses. So that accounts in part for the reduction in expenses. And as Amanda will explain, there are other factors that contributed to this, but I wanted to note that the trustees heeded the concerns that we raised back in August and took specific action, many times in opposition from Mayor Henyard, to make sure that they were starting a process of putting the village back on better financial footing.
So following along with that, the decrease in expenditures, through the first 6 months of fiscal year 2025, the village's expenditures have matched the revenues that came in during that time period. This is in comparison with the same time period in fiscal year 2024, where the gap in revenue to expenditures was almost $5 million. So the expenditure and revenue gap has improved. This gap decrease is for two primary reasons. First being, as of October fiscal 2025, revenues are approximately $3 million more than compared to the same time period in fiscal year 2024, which is largely due to the timing of when the property taxes were released to the village. In 2023 and 2024, property taxes weren't released until November or December, where in fiscal 2025, they were released much earlier. But additionally, expenditures have gone down, most notably general administration, police department expenditures, and public works. A couple of categories that we found significant decreases is in general administration, telephone, and miscellaneous expenditures, as well as in police department overtime and medical insurance. The village's cash balance has remained generally the same since the information that was presented in August. As you can see from the chart, as of May 2024, the general fund had an unrestricted cash deficit of almost 5.7 million. As of October 24, that amount is a deficit of around 5.5 million. And this deficit includes the amount of held checks that the mayor discussed previously. Those are reflected in these deficit balances. Regarding those held checks, as we presented in August, since March of 2023 and nearly every month since then, a portion of the checks that were approved and printed have had to be held. As of June 18, 2024, this was 589 checks that totaled over $6 million, which were approved but had not yet been sent to vendors. Since the August presentation, we've requested but had not been provided an updated listing of the current status of the village's held checks. However, we've been told, though not able to verify, that the current amount is still in excess of $5 million. Turning now to discuss the village's use of credit cards. As we discussed in the August presentation, we're aware of 6 different credit cards that have been in use by the village at various points in time from January 2021 through at least June of 2024. Since the August presentation, we did request updated credit card statements that would cover July 2024 through December 2024, but we did not receive any updated credit card records. As you can see from the chart, the use of credit cards steadily increased from calendar year 2021 through 2023. In 2023, the village spent over $775,000 on credit cards. As the mayor earlier discussed, oftentimes credit card expenditures have no accompanying receipts. And this credit card statements alone provide limited information about the credit card purchases. Given this overall lack of available documentation, it is not possible for us to ascertain important information about the village's credit card use, such as who made the purchase, was it an approved purchase, and what was the government purpose. This type of additional information is necessary to perform a complete investigation of the credit card use and to draw any conclusion about any individual purchase. That being said, through our investigation, we did identify certain categories of expenses that stand out, which the village may wish to pursue additional information to further understand the nature of the charges. For example, from 2021 to June of 2024, village credit cards were used for over $171,000 in travel-related costs, things such as airfare, excess baggage fees, hotels, meals, rental cars. There are over $51,000 spent at local area restaurants, as well as expenditures at retailers such as Dick's Sporting Goods, Best Buy, Wayfair, Walgreens, Apple, and Walmart. Now, not all, some of these expenditures, but not all, are reflected on the electronic warrant lists that we were provided and reviewed. However, the level of detail in the description of what the purchase is for varies by purchase. Some purchase limited information, and the description is simply the name of the merchant, or a more vague description such as meals or donuts. Others provide more information, such as training accommodations or code enforcement lunch. One area in our investigation where we were to obtain detailed purchase information relates to Amazon purchases. The vast majority of purchases made by the village on Amazon were paid for with village credit cards. From January 2021 through June of 2024, the village spent approximately $218,000 on purchase from Amazon using village credit cards, the largest spending of which occurred in 2023. Now, the vast majority of the purchases on Amazon do appear to be for routine items such as office supplies, office furniture, and supplies for the police department. And the Amazon order details show that these orders were delivered either to Village Hall or to the police department. Additionally, many of the largest purchases on Amazon, 3 of which we identified in the August presentation, were related to materials or supplies for the skating rink. This includes $5,099 for artificial ice tiles, $33,000 for artificial ice tiles, $5,600 artificial ice tiles, $4,700 artificial ice tiles, and then $3,700 for ice skates.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me just pick up and conclude on the Amazon purchases. The various routine office supply and office furniture purchases simply do not appear to be in compliance with the village's purchasing policy as we described. There appears to be no centralized purchasing or inventory control as required in the purchasing policy. So while we were able to see that these various purchases were delivered either to Village Hall or to the police department, there is no tracking system for what happened to them after they arrived here. And while Janice Johnson was listed as the originator for a number of these purchases, what we saw in the Amazon records is that there were 9 other purchasing sources identified in the Amazon records. So lots of people were billing, charging things and purchasing them from Amazon. And we similarly found no evidence of the purchases related to the ice rink that were done in 5 separate purchases totaling approximately $48,000, that they were done consistent with the purchasing policy either. For example, we were unable to find evidence that these purchases were done as a result of competitive bidding process, which an amount of that size would have been triggered by the purchasing policy, nor is there evidence that these particular purchases were presented to the board prior to approval. As you will see, one of the recommendations that we're making to the board is to institute a written policy for performing background checks of prospective village senior and key personnel. There are 3 personnel that we call out on the slide, and based on our investigation, these and other individuals either working for the village or proposed by Mayor Henyard to assume key roles have issues in their background that likely would be disqualifying if they had been properly vetted. Now, I want to go through some of the consequences
because of course there has been consequences of all the things that we've already talked about. You can't have a situation where there are no financial controls, where the trustees are systematically excluded from finding out the true nature of the financial condition of the village, where there's a routine process of exceeding the amounts of revenue with expenses, some of which may or may not be for a legitimate government purpose. The first of these cascading consequences is the audit. As I noted at the beginning of this presentation, under Illinois law, every municipality over a certain size is required to have a financial audit of its books and records every single year, and to produce that audit to the comptroller's office. The fact of the matter is that for the last several years, the village's auditor had been an accounting firm, an auditing firm known as Lauterbach and Amann. Draft audits for fiscal year 2022 were completed, but they were never finalized. And then Lauterbach and Amann resigned as auditor on October 27, 2024, effective immediately, which is essentially less than 3 weeks after we had our first public disclosure of the true financial condition of the village. And on October 15, 2024, the Illinois Comptroller's Office notified the village that it was going to force an audit on the village for not complying with the mandatory audit reporting requirement. Now, as I noted, there are literally hundreds of municipalities across this state that have long-standing delinquencies in filing their reports, but for some reason, the comptroller decided that Dalton was going to be the example. Next slide. One of the other consequences that we've seen over the course of Mayor Henyard's tenure is a significant uptick in litigation. According to court records maintained by the Legislative Council, 48 separate lawsuits have been filed against the village under Mayor Henyard's tenure. 12 pending matters relate to FOIA violations, and 8 pending matters by village vendors allege improper revocation or failure to renew business licenses. And you may have seen recent reporting that on Friday, Mayor Henyard herself was held in criminal contempt for failing to sign a liquor license for an existing business owner here in the village, despite being ordered by the court to do so multiple times. Those have costs. Next, I want to walk you through the insurance issue, because insurance is a significant cost in the budget for the village of Dalton. The village's insurance needs are primarily handled by 2 entities: an insurance broker, which is Insurer Source LLC, and something called a third-party administrator, which currently is Charles Taylor TPA. In 2024, the village's insurance coverage became at risk due to late or non-payment of fees. The village's premium financing company sought to avoid its contract with the village, and let me explain what that means. There is a finance company that fronts the money for the village's various insurance costs, and the village pays it back on a monthly basis. But because of non-payment, that finance company walked away from its responsibilities and said, we're not going to we're not going to finance any future funds to the village to pay its insurance. That created a bit of a crisis. The village's longtime third-party administrator, that's the entity that then pays claims that are made by people that trigger the insurance policies. That third-party administrator also walked away and refused to renew its agreement with the village, again, as a result of problems in payment. And then longtime insurance carriers. The village had, like most municipalities, has multiple insurance carriers that cover their insurance, particularly liability insurance. Many of those longtime carriers canceled in the spring of 2024 or declined to renew the village's policies. Next slide. Now, this came at a critical time. The renewal period for village insurance is early August of every year. Typically 60 days before that time, the insurance broker will start negotiating, renewing terms of coverage with the various insurers. You had the TPA walk away, which is known to the insurance companies covering the village. You had the finance company walk away, which is known to the village. And the fact that these other carriers decided not to renew, that also sent a ripple through the insurance market. As a result of the efforts of the insurance broker, you reached out to 36 different insurers, including 10 excess insurers, and then 26 non-excess carriers. 5 carriers chose not to renew their coverage for the village. 13 carriers declined to quote coverage for the village, meaning they weren't even interested in providing a quote, and 1 carrier simply didn't respond. And of the excess carriers who provided a quote, they set their threshold for coverage very, very high. 2 set it at 25 million, 4 set it at 10, and 2 at 5, and 1 declined, again, to quote any coverage. Now, the village was eventually able to obtain coverage for the 2024-25 period. However, there were 2 important concessions that the village was compelled to make in order to make sure that it had insurance coverage from August of 2024 to August of 2025. As you can see from this slide, the village was compelled to pay more for less coverage. We have here a kind of side-by-side comparison of what the coverage was under general liability, law enforcement, public official, and auto liability. In the preceding year, the coverages were almost equal at $11 million. But as you can see, in the current coverage period, there's a significant decrease in the amount of insurance coverage that the village now has to handle whatever liability issues may come up. The other significant concession was that the insurance carriers refused to cover Mayor Henyard. As you can see in the third bullet, there's a quote directly from the insurance policy. The insurer covers all elected officials, provides that as a separate part of its coverage, but specifically in writing excluded any claim made against any insured which is brought by, on behalf of, or against the following entities or individuals, and that is Tiffany Henyard. And the emphasis here was in the original. This coverage exclusion regarding Mayor Henyard also applied not only to the general liability policy, but also the law enforcement policy. Now, there are implications for the village given the cancellation of coverage for Mayor Henyard during this coverage period. Mayor Henyard will have to pay for all defensive costs related to her out of pocket, or the village could decide on its own to pay for her coverage, but it won't be covered by the insurance carriers. Now, Mayor Henyard would then be responsible for any judgments, settlements, or attorney's fees rendered against her personally, separate from the village. And there's an open question as to whether or not Mayor Henyard will participate in litigation that she has to pay for herself, and what that would mean for the village if she simply defaults, meaning doesn't show up, doesn't participate in ongoing litigation. So the absence of coverage has significant implications for the village and for the taxpayers of the village of Dalton. Other implications. The fire department. After 2 years with no resolution of a contract, finally in the fall of 2024, Legislative Council was able to reach a collective bargaining agreement with the fire department union, which a majority of the board approved over Mayor Henyard's objections. The village is currently in negotiations with the police department, but the challenge with that, negotiating that contract, is without audited financial statements. And you remember we said there's been no audit of the financial statements since fiscal year 2021. It's difficult for village negotiators to be able to project what revenues are going to be coming in so they know what a fair salary and compensation would be. Now, as we're winding down here, I want to cover quickly some other remaining items that I know are of interest to the public. And let's talk for a minute about the Las Vegas trips and the allegations against Trustee Holmes. There are actually two trips, one in May 22 and another in May 2023, where Mayor Henyard and a large delegation went to an economic development convention in Las Vegas. The convention was called Recon, and that was put on by the International Council of Shopping Centers. Financial records from the village and Thornton Township reflect that a number of people traveled to Las Vegas on both of these trips. And at the expense of their travel, their lodging, their meals, and entertainment were paid for on village and township credit cards. There is no evidence that any business development opportunities came to the village as a result of either of these two trips. You are all aware of the fact that there are allegations against Trustee Holmes as a result of contacts between him and a former village employee on the May 2023 Las Vegas trip. We're not going to go into chapter and verse on this because we are not a criminal investigative authority, but suffice it to say, the allegations are that Holmes took advantage and assaulted a young woman while she was unconscious in his hotel room, that he contacted a village Dalton police officer who was also on the trip, FaceTimed him, showing the young woman unconscious on the hotel room, and some of you are aware that a recording of that FaceTime call has recently surfaced. The young woman eventually filed complaints in Las Vegas and suburban Cook County. Fall of last year, the Las Vegas criminal authorities closed its case after its investigation. The young woman has also filed a complaint with the EOC alleging that she was wrongfully terminated from her employment as a result of making an outcry to Mayor Henyard directly about the alleged assault. And the young woman has subsequently filed a lawsuit which makes similar allegations. And that lawsuit remains pending. Importantly, neither the young woman, Trustee Holmes, or other witnesses cooperated with our investigation. Another thing that I think is important regarding this alleged incident between Trustee Holmes and this young woman. Working through the Delgado law firm, we learned that Mayor Henyard authorized an investigation to be conducted by a firm called R.E. Walsh and Associates out of Oak Brook, Illinois. This investigation was not authorized by the board, and the results have not been shared with the board. It is unknown to this day what the scope of the investigation was, who was interviewed, if anyone, what documents were reviewed as part of this investigation or its findings. The R.E. Walsh firm has refused to provide its report or otherwise answer any questions about its investigation because it has not been paid for its services. Let's talk for a moment about Thornton Township. In the course of our investigation, we received a lot of information that there was significant use of Thornton Township funds to cover expenses for the benefit of the village of Dalton. Similar to the lack of cooperation from the village, personnel under the control of their supervisor Henyard, we face obstacles obtaining documents from Thornton Township. We therefore are not suggesting, we do not have a complete picture of a variety of the allegations against Mayor Henyard and others in connection with the operation of the township. Nonetheless, we received some information to determine that a similar pattern of financial operations existed at the township during Mayor Henyard's tenure. For example, credit card use. We were able to review records from May of 22 through October of 22, June of 23 through, January of 23 through June of 23, and January of 24 through June of 24. Obviously, not a complete set, but detailed records. Some of these records, excuse me, were heavily redacted. They look like the CIA put the documents through their censors. So it made analysis somewhat difficult, but we were able to decipher some of the records. There were multiple credit cards in use in Thornton Township, and the names of township employees specifically, such as Tony Sherman, Keith Freeman, Shelley Miles, Robert Hunt, Marsha Walker Brown, Tanika Hughes, William Moore, and others. In 2024, for example, based on those 6 months of records, monthly charges range from $88,000 a month to over $100,000 in many of those months. And there were a significant number of food purchases and other expenditures that frankly warrant further investigation as to whether or not there was a legitimate government purpose for those expenses. There was overlapping hiring and firing of township personnel. A number of witnesses that we interviewed indicated that within months of Tiffany Henyard becoming supervisor on March 3rd, 2022, a number of longstanding employees lost their jobs. We heard many allegations about political retaliation, cronyism, and that people were let go because they questioned the seeming elimination of hiring and purchasing norms. Efforts to verify these allegations, principally through FOIA requests, did not bear fruit, as the township often claimed no responsive documents or failed to address specific FOIAs. We know that Henyard hired her boyfriend, Kamal Woods, to run a township youth program. His personnel file, such as it is, contained very little information to justify this hire. Tamika Henyard also became an employee of the township. And Henyard installed her former administrative assistant, Carmen Carlisle, to fill a vacancy left by the death of a long-standing trustee. We received information of various allegations of political retaliation. You are all, by this point, well aware of Henyard's treatment of Township Assessor Cassandra Elston that included locking Elston out of township offices and then later accusing Elston of abandoning her job. All of those things are well documented. We won't go into details. We were able to verify that longtime township employee Dwayne Thrash has alleged in a lawsuit that he was fired from his job, not because of competence or insubordination issues, as were later put into his personnel file, but because he refused efforts by Henyard and Freeman to agree to a plan to effectively let Henyard take control of a local suburban school district on which Thrash was one of 3 members. The alleged plan included creating a paid employee role for Henyard, firing other employees, and terminating the relationship with an existing law firm and instead installing Henyard's chosen law firm. Can you guess? Thrash alleges that he would not agree to the plan and subsequently lost his Thornton Township employment in retaliation. Now, we have a number of recommendations that we are making to the trustees. I'm not going to spend time tonight going through those. The trustees have them. But suffice it to say, there are obvious things related to finance. There are obvious things related to personnel. And some of these things, as I indicated, the trustees have already started to embrace and implement, particularly with respect to putting guardrails around the finances of the village. And with that, we will close. Thank you for your time and attention. Now, as I said at the outset, we've passed out index cards. If you have questions written on them, pass them forward, and we will entertain some questions. Can members of the Park District staff perhaps help us collect some of these cards and bring them forward? If you have a card, hold it up in the air and somebody will come by. Maybe pass them forward to the front. That's probably the easiest thing to do. And remember, if you'd like an electronic copy of this PowerPoint deck, please make sure you provide your name and your email address. Come on up, man. If you've got questions, please pass up your index card. We'll try to get to as many as we possibly can.
I was having a heart attack.
All right, we have a couple of questions. One is, why didn't the $5 million come to Dalton? The answer is we don't know. What happens is monies get appropriated and become part of a budget. It will go to the relevant state department for allocation, but then the municipality has to fill out certain paperwork in order for it to claim that allocation. We have not found any evidence that happened with the Village of Dalton. This person also asked, is there anything to hold Tiffany personally liable? Well, as you know, there are a number of different lawsuits that have been filed, and obviously you have your vote. Next question is, if supervisor is uninsurable, how can she hold a position? Now, the insurance issue is with respect to her role as the mayor of the Village of Dalton. We have no visibility into whether or not the insurance issue also applies to the township, but she can still hold her position. But as I indicated, with a lack of insurance coverage, it puts the village and the taxpayers potentially at risk. And certainly she would have to pay for her own lawyer, her own defense, if she is sued in the course of her duties. There's a question of who pays the services that are rendered by my colleague and I. As you recall, the trustees voted to approve the hiring of us, and that comes from the Village of Dalton. Are you bringing me one more question, ma'am? Come on. Okay, that's fine. Okay. There's a question that whether the village will be able to get federal or state funding to bail us out of this mess. And the answer is, I think that's a matter that the trustees are actively pursuing. There's a question, have all of your findings been given to the FBI and any agency concerned? Maybe we'll all turn and wave to our friends in the federal government who are surely watching this live stream. What I will say is we have been in contact with members of the U.S. Attorney's Office who are investigating this matter. I know that the FBI has also been in contact with various people who have information about the allegations are here, what they intend to do and the timing of that. No one really knows except for them. We'll just sort through and see if there are any other questions. Someone asked, the $5 million grant, was it mismanagement or theft that we did not get it? As I mentioned before, there's a process by which a municipality that gets an appropriation has to claim it. There's no evidence that that process was followed. There's a question of when can vendors expect past due payments to be handled? I'm aware that the trustees are working diligently to try to work through the number of vendors who are owed goods and resources, but recognizing that village resources are tight. There's a question of how much money is owed to credit cards. I think we covered some of that in our report. The trustees have substantially cut down access to credit cards, so we expect credit card spending to go down. Most of the payments were made and the balances paid in total at the time that they were incurred. And the second question, is Tiffany going to be held responsible to repay the money spent on the ice rink? That's a very good question to which we don't have the answer. Okay, all right, we've got the final 3 questions. All right, final question. The others were request to get a copy of the PowerPoint deck. How many laws have been broken?
That's a
Good question, but impossible to quantify. Thank you all. Thank you all for your time and attention.
All right, I guess that's.
Don't forget my shirt.
Okay, we want to thank everybody for coming out, and on behalf of the Dalton residents, board of trustees, we want to ask everybody to give a round of applause to Mayor Lightfoot for her hard work. Yeah, we were working diligently. This has been very critical for us to start to get a picture of what's going on, so we can begin working on that. So Mayor Lightfoot's influence has really been tremendous on us getting on the right path.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, there were a significant number of folks that didn't cooperate in this investigation, either because they were scared or they chose not to. And there were some people who didn't cooperate initially, but then I'll say saw the light and did. And I want to call out one of those people was Keith Freeman, the administrator. He was definitely Team Henyard early on and wasn't particularly cooperative, but sometime late last summer, clearly had a change of heart and has been very instrumental in making sure that we got access to the financial records that were critical for us to be able to provide this information to you. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Thank Mr. Freeman for what he has done to work with the trustees and legislative council to make sure that there was more transparency, particularly around financial matters for the village. Thank you all and good night.
All right. So what you guys thought? What's your guys' initial, what do you guys really think about what you saw for about an hour? Let me take my circle. What do you guys think? I'm starving and want more. So let's try to recap a little bit of what was said. It was a lot of information. I'm gonna try to get that deck. If anyone has it and able to get it, email it to me, please do. What's going on with my screen? Where am I? Okay. I'm staring at my camera. Okay. What do you guys think? We can chat for a little bit as I try to. I wrote some notes down and what I thought. I'll be all right. This is a serious question. Maybe I should put this as a poll question. Someone mentioned do a poll question. Problem is, I didn't want to touch the computer as I was goofing off. Do you guys believe that this was illegal or unethical, incompetent? Like, because I did find it interesting that Lori didn't say, like, she didn't answer that. The last question, like, is she going, did she commit a crime? She didn't answer the question, which I found particularly interesting. So, do you guys believe this was, did Henyard commit a crime or just incompetent and basically just almost destroyed the village? So I'm gonna put a little poll. Was it illegal? Should I spell it the way she spells it? Yeah, I'm gonna spell that. I'm gonna spell it just the way that she say it. Or is it just incompetence or unethical is usually illegal, but I'm gonna put this on before we had. I was gonna put this. Okay, start that poll right there. All right. Yes, like I saw. Yeah, unethical, but not legal. Both. Oh yeah, both. Okay. Illegal. I didn't do it that way. I didn't spell that way. She stole or she dumb? Like, you know what I mean? Like, did you guys find that interesting that she did not say she committed a crime? I would assume that she would say that. I think Lori Lightfoot isn't someone that is worried about anything. I mean, she's basically contracted to do this. And the idea that she didn't mention that, she didn't say that. So I found that interesting. I'll just say that. I did find that, and yeah, you're right. It wasn't a criminal investigation. Probably wasn't, but she could, if I see someone snatch a purse down and run down the street, I don't need to be investigated and say, hey, that was a crime committed. Someone stole. I saw it. The fact that that wasn't mentioned, I just found that to be interesting. But also, she may not want to step on the investigation of Fed. So I understand it. But I just found that to be kind of interesting. Definitely, she should have no business running anything, obviously. Casey Cat, with the 5 membership, appreciate you very, very, very much. Thank you all for hanging out with me. I know, I don't know, did you guys get what you wanted? This is a very highly anticipated situation. Did you guys get what you wanted? She said that there's financial crimes. Lightfoot stayed in her lane. She didn't want to say it. You spelled illegal wrong. I know I was following Henyard the way she says it, illegal. But you guys know it. Lightfoot is too smart to say it's illegal. Interesting. Nothing changed. Actually, I'll tell you, this chat is flying so quickly. I'm trying to keep up. Yeah, it's flying too fast. So let's see if we could try to recap what was said during this meeting. So I know you guys were pretty bored in the beginning because you guys wanted the hot tea and the hot mess early, but Lightfoot wanted to educate us, okay? Now, the one thing that we can help Lori Lightfoot out is hopefully next time she gets some ginger tea or like throat lozenges or honey. Like I mentioned, I think honey is pretty effective. Some hot tea, because she obviously was probably having some kind of cold. I know people say that she talks that way normally, but it's cold outside. People get sick during this time of year. But she wanted to let us know, like, Dalton operates under a trustee form of government. Mayor, trustees, key employees, sharing responsibilities of running the village. Trustees are supposed to oversee the decisions and make sure everything is following the rules laid out in Illinois law, right? Got the mayor, got the village administrator, director of finance, the director, administrator, whatever. And Illinois law sets clear rules on how a village is supposed to operate. Clearly, Henyard did not follow those rules, right? Budgets are supposed to be approved early in the fiscal year, and there's supposed to be audits that's supposed to be conducted every year, shared with the state. Apparently, there's a lot of municipalities that are not following that. Any spending beyond the budget requires 2/3 votes by the trustees. When these rules are followed, everything is hunky-dory, transparent. Everyone is doing pretty well when those rules are followed. But in Dalton, Henyard didn't give a damn about those rules. That's why we all here, just hanging out, doing our thing. Oh, I see another super chat. Anton with a 199, appreciate that. Imagine if she had full access to those records. Of course, and Henyard wasn't going to try to help an investigation. She's getting looked up by the feds. But what I saw was Henyard, what I received from Lori Lightfoot, looking at the financial mismanagement of Dalton. The fact that there's missing and delayed financial records. Dalton did not file the required financial records on time, or some weren't filed at all. Important audits and financial statements were missing, leaving everyone confused in the dark about where the money, how's it being spent? Like, what's going on here, right? The village auditors quit. They quit late last year. They said, listen, this is not transparent. I'm out. I'm not going to be bothering with this. Like, why are we doing this? Citing issues with financial transparency. So this is basically a lot that we already kind of know. Henyard and administration are withholding financial information from the trustees. The trustees were basically systematically excluded from learning about the village's true financial condition. There were routine process of overspending, spending a lot of money without any proper justification. Probably all that money was spent with the ice skating rink, getting ice tiles. I did not know. Now we know if you want to build an ice skating rink, you need the tiles, and you need about like almost $40,000 worth of them, and then you guys get the $30,000 for the skates, and then since you're mad with everyone, you don't let anyone use the skating rink unless you're there to do your little promotion and your little events, and whatever, right? So that's the problem with the purchasing policies. Dalton's policy requires checks and approvals to prevent overspending. Like, I think, for instance, they said the department heads can only approve expenses up to $1,000. The village administrator can approve up to, I think, $5,000, right? Yeah. Anything above $5,000 must go to the trustees for approval. So when these rules aren't followed, some purchases didn't go through the proper approval process, and others had no receipts to explain what the money was used for. Now, again, a lot of stuff we kind of already know, but at the same time, it's important for us to kind of recap. I think Lori Lightfoot's report was solid, that kind of brought the context to everything that's been done into our conversation. Succeeding too with the 999 super chat. Appreciate you. Audits are required for grants. Yes, absolutely. And then what's the next big thing? The misuse of credit cards. The village spent a lot of money on credit cards. I think it was, and hopefully someone gives me that deck, or maybe I'll find out a way to get it. I think it was spent over $775,000 on credit cards from 2021 to 2023. Many of the purchases were vague, not explained, charged like meals. Meals, okay. What's going on with the meals? Oh, miscellaneous expenses. Interesting. So again, without those receipts and oversight, it's hard to know if these expenses were legitimate. It's kind of like you're trying to be funny with the IRS when you're putting claims, especially running a little business, you put just meals. Those are just miscellaneous purchases. Yeah, but there's a lot of money that you're spending on it. It can't just be I can't even pronounce the word now. Miscellaneous purchases doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Keith snitched. Oh, yeah, because he got caught for the bankruptcy. He's under a federal investigation, so of course he had to snitch. Not only the bank account deficit, plus you had to add the checks that were written and not sent to vendors. Yeah. 50K for paper. How did they not get receipts for credit cards? That's a fantastic question. I have no idea. No clue. I mean, and the problem is there's so many lawsuits and legal challenges. So I guess they got the official number. Under Henyard's tenure, 48 lawsuits were filed against the village. 48. That's a lot of lawsuits, right? I think it was Let me separate this. So it was 12 lawsuits over FOIA violations, 8 lawsuits from vendors claiming improper, I guess they not get their licenses. So it was like, hey, I'm not getting your license. You're kind of holding up the works. You could talk about what happened recently with the owner of the St. Patrick's, I guess, steakhouse, this big building. And from earlier on, this videos I've done at this point, it could be 10 months ago. It looks like the typical thing that happens in Henyard's situation, her circle. She gets real cool with people, and then eventually they have a falling out because that building was sold from Kamal. Kamal sold the person who used that property to build the steakhouse. So they had to have been cool at one point, and then I guess someone didn't do what the other person wanted. You could say maybe Henyard wanted something from this person that they didn't provide anymore. I mean, the people who run the St. Patrick, I forgot her name, they donated to Henyard's campaign. So I don't know what happened between now and then, but Henyard seems to have a lot of falling out with many people. I mean, she was really cool with Trustee Carlisle from Thornton Township. Now they're beefing. Keith Freeman. So it just looks like in Henyard's circle, this type of thing happens where they're cool at one point and then things kind of go in the wrong direction, right? So Henyard found herself in indirect criminal contempt for failing to sign the liquor license after multiple court orders, right? So, Kirk with the $20 super chat, appreciate you. Kirk, cooking with Tiff, how to make toilet wine, coming soon. Oh, that sounds disgusting. That sounds disgusting. But I tell you, my wife worked at Rikers for almost 2 years. She stepped out and still works for the city, but different thing. And she never ate their food. But as you guys may not know, but when you are in prison or jail, Rikers jail, they be whipping up some it's crazy like dishes and just grabbing like stuff they get from the canteen or from the store or whatever, and they mix up some stuff. Now I don't think toilet wine would be something I would drink. I'd rather just drink water. But they'd be whipping it up in there. I mean, they have no choice. They can't go down to McDonald's or Chipotle. Anyway, so let's talk about more of what Henyard did wrong. It looks like to me like she is destroying she destroyed the village, right? I mean, the insurance thing is outrageous. Just some of the things that was said by Lori Lightfoot, the withholding of information. Henyard allegedly directed staff to stop sharing financial reports with the trustees. That sounds illegal. When I think about that, I mean, that's definitely unethical. That sounds like that should be a crime, right? Like you can't, like how you're telling the people, your staff or other people to stop sharing financial reports with the trustees. So this created that environment of the lack in transparency that made it hard for the trustees to do their jobs. She also reportedly demanded that spending reports will be sent to her first, giving her control over the information that the trustees can see. That sounds like a crime. I don't know. Mystical Chick with joining as a new member. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy your stay. That does sound like a crime. All that money and she still got convicted. But yeah, that sounds definitely unethical. You could say incompetent. Well, mostly unethical because there's competency you're trying to hide. But does it get to that realm of being illegal activities? So Henyard's administration also frequently ignored the village's purchasing policies. We talked about that. This allowed unauthorized spending to happen without any oversight. The large expenses, like the credit card charges, the contracts were often approved without following the proper steps. So just off the bat, obviously she should not ever run with anything if these things are happening. If Henyard is running your town, your city, you're not going to know what is being spent, right? This is a really sad part. I realized this when I looked at it. The village missed out on $5 million in state funding because the administration failed to complete the necessary paperwork. I'll say this again. The village missed out on $5 million in state funding because it didn't fill out the necessary paperwork. So that money could have been helped to use to improve Dalton's financial situation, and they couldn't file the paperwork. That's pretty embarrassing. I think it was also talking about $3 million in federal COVID relief funds that were spent. Some of it went to, again, questionable expenditures. Let's see what else I have here. What else? It was a lot. It was a lot to take in there. So, and then the village insurance policies were disrupted due to late or non-payment of fees, leading to higher costs and reduced coverage. I don't have the numbers. We could probably check back later. But when your village is being sued a whole lot, and then you have a mayor that's being sued, and there's a lot going on, what kind of insurance company? I mean, think about what happened in California, right? The insurance companies in California knew about the fire, it looks like before anyone else did, when they said, you know what, we're not covering for this because we know eventually the fire is going to come and burn everything up. So we're not going to provide coverage for that because we're here to make money. We're here for profits. We're not necessarily here to help anyone. So if an insurance company is looking at this village and seeing all of the issues, why would you provide insurance for them? It's excuse me. It's similar to one of my favorite action movie stars, Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan couldn't get insurance for many of the movies that him and his crew were doing because they would perform the stunts for themselves. They didn't necessarily hire stunt doubles. They would do it themselves, and they always got hurt. So an insurance company trying to cover for accidents would not cover them. Like, why? I know you're going to hurt yourself. You're doing crazy stuff. It's kind of similar. The insurance, they didn't want to deal with this, right? So at the end, I just feel like there are some mistakes, and I think there's some learning that we all are understanding, especially if you are in the village and you are running things and you are the trustees, and even for people who are there. There's stuff that they should be able to take this and learn from. The poor staffing, the oversight, the financial department had a high turnover and long vacancies in key positions like the director of finance. That's a big deal. You probably shouldn't have the director of finance position open for a very long time, right? The village relied heavily on outside contractors to handle finances, which is expensive and less effective than having a full-time in-house team. But I think, the village is only 21,000 people. Maybe they have to do that. I don't know. What else? Also, Dalton lacked systems to track spending and enforce rules. There's no centralized purchasing system to ensure the money was spent wisely. The credit card purchases were not properly monitored, leading to wasteful and unapproved spending. These gaps allowed someone like Henyard to spend money like crazy, and it goes unchecked. What else was discussed? What else they were discussing? They didn't say too much about what happened in Vegas. I didn't see anything there that we did not know already. I guess she seemed like she didn't want to touch that. And again, it's not a criminal investigation, so she doesn't want to she don't have much to say about that. But she provided some recommendations, increased transparency. You want to obviously strengthen the oversight. The financial department needs more staff and better training to properly ensure that there's oversight and improve on FOIA processes. I guess Henyard doesn't understand how important FOIA requests and responding to those requests are. They're very important. They need to be responded to in a certain amount of time. Obviously, if they're able to do it, provide information. If can't, they need to respond. You can't just decide, I'm not going to talk to the person trying to get information. It doesn't work that way. And obviously, just follow the damn rules. Follow the state laws and its own policies. Get the audits on time. Approve budgets early. All that good stuff. So, I think I don't know. I guess we were all waiting for like a bigger bombshell to happen, but it was just more of consolidating and providing the context of how it should be when Lori was talking in the beginning to how Henyard did the complete and utter opposite, and she had help with Keith Freeman and others that she was able to do this, but this couldn't last forever, especially when the feds come in, grab Lacey for what he was doing, bankruptcy issues. Keith Freeman, the reason why Keith Freeman is doing his job now is because he's in trouble and he needs to show that, hey, he's going to snitch and he's going to do whatever it takes so he doesn't get as much trouble as he currently is in. Because I remember very early on, Keith Freeman him and Henyard were together, and he did a lot of terrible stuff. And once he slipped up and wasn't able to file for bankruptcy properly, and the man still owes about six figures to the other city, I think city in Robbins. Yeah, I think he owes money there too. Of course, when the authorities come in asking for more information, he's going to jump in and help out because his ass is on the line. So I don't know if he changed into a better person necessarily. Bill in Disguise. I think that's a good point there about how she was effectively pushed out by Keith Freeman, at least for the FOIA request. I think I remember that. It didn't have that much. If you're not able to do your job, what else? What can you really do? Yes, it's to and it's to Robbins, correct? I believe that's I think that's what it is. Keithus, about background checks. Now they did recommend to the village that I think they had a list of people that I think it was Freeman, Lacey, and Carmen that they shouldn't have been hired based on their background check. Background checks are important, especially for working in government. Because you don't want you hired a person, even if they're saying all the right things, and they're scam artists like Keith Freeman, allegedly. But again, he owes some money to Robbins. I bet you Robbins probably think he's scammed. The feds move when they want to move. I know, like, I am living in New York City. We have a federally indicted mayor. I know from what the feds announced that they started raiding and confiscating his devices and finding files. From that point to the time he got indicted was about a year. Who knows what I'm sure they were investigating before this. But from what was said in the news to when he got hit with the indictment was about a year. I'm not sure about the other mayor, Sheng Tao from Oakland. I don't know how long they were investigating, but I felt that was faster. I think Sheng Tao was just, I won't say she's more sloppy. I think Henyard has been extremely sloppy, but they got the two big city mayors very quickly. Maybe because it was more on the line. It's a bigger get. You know how the feds are, or just like most authorities, they want to get the big fish, get the flashy news conference about what they've done. So it was about a year, at least for Mayor Eric Adams. And now Eric Adams is just trying to, listen, he's on Tucker Carlson. He's on Fox News. It's all about the immigrations. And I will give him that. He did complain about the migrant situation before. But now he's all in because, and remember, Donald Trump invited Adams to the inauguration. So Adams knows, hey, listen, if I just keep it chill, keep it cool, when I probably get convicted, because I think Adams did do what he said he did. He was getting kickbacks. Trump is going to probably hit that pardon. So he got to play his position. I don't even know what is the results of the poll before we head out. Oh, interesting. Only 64%. Okay. Yeah, cause I'm trying, and of course I'm gonna get some information. I'm sure I'll get some few texts and some emails about, nah, this is all 100% illegal. I don't know. That was the one thing that I felt, maybe Lori Lightfoot was being coy and she didn't want to say it. She doesn't want to probably scare Henyard. It's possible. But it just felt like, is Henyard just effed everything up because she's really bad at what she was doing? Or is this a illegal criminal enterprise? RICO, was this a RICO case, right? That's the question. I mean, the only people that are going to be able to do this is the feds at this point. So on that note, guys, tomorrow, we'll be back here tomorrow. There will be a Thornton Township meeting. It'll be the first meeting where we have the whole gang. The whole gang's coming together. We got the new person in the band, Stephanie Wiedemann. She will be the trustee. She's going to be there until May. This is going to be the first time Henyard comes back. This may be her first public response to all of the stuff that's been happening last week. She had a really bad week last week. Let's see how she reacts. Let's see if she brings some poise and realize, I'm done. I'm cooked. Let me not embarrass myself anymore. How about we get the insurance for the township, get everything back in order. I'm not going to be able to stick around. Maybe I'll throw some little sly comments here and there, and I'm sure she's going to try to get Christopher Clark to be the supervisor, because I know it's Christopher Clark and Napoleon Harris and a few others. I think Nate Fields, I think he'll be there. So she may just do that, or will she just continue to just bring the mess and nonsense? I think you already know what she's going to probably do. So yeah, she's going to probably do that. So tomorrow we'll be here. I think it's 7:30 Eastern. I think it's 6:30 Central. So we'll be right back here. But you don't think Tiffany will be there tomorrow? It would suck if she don't show up. I'm like, really? Everyone's here. You got the full crew. You got Trustee Carlisle, Trustee Gonzalez. You have Trustee, obviously Wiedemann. She's right there. And you got Trustee Gray. You gotta show up. You need to show up, and just don't embarrass yourself. You know what? I do hope for a very boring meeting. I want a meeting where they get the stuff done. I'm just sitting here eating, I don't know, a sandwich, and we just see like, okay, at least things are going in the right direction. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be some fireworks. I think Henyard's going to be really, really, really annoyed. And her people may going to be there, and I'm sure they're going to be pretty annoyed. They've been taking quite a beating in the last couple of days. So we'll see what's going to happen there. But again, appreciate all of you for hanging out with me throughout this time here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Be safe out there, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.